And now for the Cave of No Return. A place that travelers go to for a challenge, I guess, because why else would someone go to a cave that's called that? And they never return, because it's too dangerous. I guess that's the only reason that people would go here to challenge themselves, because it's a cave. I mean, you should be able to just walk around it. It doesn't make any sense logically that you would be forced to go through this cave to progress through the game, just to go to Hyrule Castle. Because, like, why can't you just walk around it? It's not like you're going to Death Mountain. Then it would make sense, because you have to go through a cave to go up it and get to the mountain, because they're higher up now. It's not very intuitive that lighting torches are just going to cause the force gems to fall from the sky, but you're compelled to do it anyways, just because they're there. The lantern doesn't really work that much differently than it does in every other game. It actually has a light that isn't absolutely terrible in size, like in Link Between Worlds, which is vital considering you have 4 links. So you better have a large light. And that's really it. It doesn't really work any differently. It's just like in Link to the Past. And I really don't like how you have to carry keys above your head in this game, because it's one of the biggest problems with this game. There's no reason that you can't just have the key like show up at the bottom of the screen saying, hey, you collected it, so we're gonna remember that you got this key, and the next time you walk into a locked door, you'll unlock it. I always cringe at seeing this part. I mean, oh, that must have hurt. Like, just crushing. Like, I love the fact that you can crush enemies to death in this game. Like, that's such a nice touch. Like, I don't think you could do that in other Zelda games before this. And you have the color-coded blocks that obviously only the right Link can push, but I just demonstrated there the biggest problem I had with block pushing in general in Zelda. It's always trial and error trying to figure out which direction that you can push the block. Because a lot of times, like, at first the dungeon seemed to be telling you which direction you could push it, because it would have a little brown patch in the dirt that would tell you that you can push the block in that direction. But then immediately contradicted itself when I had to go into the place, the square that's surrounded by gray blocks, and it had a chest in it and a rat. Because I looked at the brown patch of the dirt, like the one that Link was just standing on, and oh, you can't push the block over to there. And you pretty much have to fall into the holes first before you know where exactly they are. Fortunately, they stay there forever after you fall into them. So it's not like they close up or something. Obviously there's no magic powder in this game, so I'm looking at the bubbles and they're definitely more challenging because you can't just turn them into fairies this time around. It's kind of refreshing to see what's normally Dark World enemies in the Light World. But one of the biggest problems I have with this game is kind of exemplified here, that the reach with the sword is atrociously tiny. I mean, it's not as bad as it could be, but it's still pretty short ranged. And it makes it very easy to get hit by the enemies, especially when you're ganged up on. And I think the fact that the camera can be pulled back makes it worse, because it makes it harder to see how close you are to the enemy in the top-down perspective. So it's easy to miss your attacks. The torches constantly firing fireballs at me are pretty annoying. Because, like, I'm trying to focus on destroying all the jars so that I can get as much money as I can. But I can't block with my shield and destroy all the jars at the same time. Like, that is something that's really great about this game, is that, like, if this game was made now, you wouldn't be allowed to just block projectiles by facing them. You would have to hold the R button to hold your shield up, which would really suck. So I'm glad that this game doesn't do that. And the blue bracelet, obviously a reference to Zelda 1. So that's nice. And the bow, well, the difference here is that you have to hold down the A button so that special arrows can be fired. And these special arrows, like, they'll keep on going north until they hit a wall, and they'll keep going through all the enemies in their path. While normal arrows, they'll just hit one enemy and be done with it. So that's pretty cool. Like, with all the other bows and arrows in Zelda history, you can't do that. Like, imagine if you could do that in the 3D games. I like that puzzle, where it just flickers between higher currency force gem. So it's like a timing puzzle. But yeah, the bow is cool. This isn't, though, because this is blatant trial and error. You have no way of knowing what you're supposed to do here, like which direction you're supposed to go. So the only thing that you can do is just rely on your gaming instincts. Obviously, they're not going to make it so that you can just constantly go left forever, or constantly go right forever, and you'll progress. So I just alternated, and that was that. So it really wasn't as bad as I thought it was going to be. It says Game Boy Advance SP there. That's because if you're playing with the Game Boy Advance as a controller, I mean, I think the normal GBA works too, then when you go into caves or houses, you actually look down at your GBA screen and you can see Link walking on it. And that's why it feels like you're walking into a different world when you go into a cave or something. Because like the sound effects change, for example. Like when you're low on health in a cave, it sounds more MIDI. That's because that's the game trying to compensate for basically working under the assumption that you're playing on the GBA. But of course, I'm not playing on the GBA because I don't even have a working GBA that can connect to because the only GBA I have is out of batteries and doesn't work anymore. So basically, I'm playing with a controller, so you just see the little square on the screen. And that boss was so pathetically easy that I didn't even have the chance to talk about it before I beat it. You just stun him with the bow of all things, and you attack him. I remember when I was a kid, at one point I would just sit there and watch him pant in exhaustion to see how long I could get away with it. Like, he just stands there forever. But like, is this Shadow Link we're talking about? The ultimate test of the darkness I was about to say Sonic, in the darkness in Link's heart. And he's so pathetic, like he dies so quickly. Like you'd expect Shadow Link to have the same amount of health as you. I really like the music in this game. Like, it's just so nostalgic to hear like Link to the Past music remixed in GameCube-like instruments. Like, I don't know if this is a real orchestra or a GameCube imitation. I honestly can't tell. But either way, it's great. Like, this music is great. And the music we're gonna hear later is great. Obviously, pressing the Z button will close the screen. And yeah, you can actually close the screen while you're still in a cave or house. And you can actually keep on moving inside of that cave or house with the screen gone, like completely blind. I'm not really sure what the point of that is. Well, actually there is a point, because in multiplayer you can carry the other players, and you can go into Dark World and carry the other players from the Dark World that were in the Light World. So you kind of have to. But the thing is that in multiplayer, and this is I just showed off that you can attack when you're carrying something like a bush or whatever, you can attack with it by pressing the B button. But it's such a short range attack that there's no point. You have to attack these helmeted giant guys from the side or from behind. but they're surprisingly pathetic. Although their thrust attack will knock you backwards, because swords have knockback apparently. But anyways, in multiplayer, you can carry players that are in the light world from the dark world somehow. And so that's a possible benefit to being able to get rid of the screen. But the thing is that in multiplayer, you are forced to use the GBA controller. I really hate these enemies. Those stupid shields and swords always blocking my attacks, and it feels like I'm totally helpless because even the bushes get blocked by their shields. They're just so incredibly annoying. But anyways, that's the biggest problem with this game in the missed opportunity sense. Is like, the great thing about this game is supposed to be that it's a multiplayer Zelda game. But then they go and completely destroy that by forcing every single player to have a GBA connected to the GameCube in order to play the game. There's absolutely no reason for this. Because, I mean, well, maybe it is required? Because imagine that you had two different players go into two different caves or buildings on the screen. You'd only be able to show, like, you'd only be able to show one of the players where they are. I mean, well, actually, I think you could just have the screen that shows up when you're inside a cave be, like, to the left and in the corner of the screen, like the northwest corner, and shrunken down. And that way maybe you could have multiple of these on the screen at once. And so I believe you could feasibly fit up to 4 of them on one screen. So you should be able to... There's really no reason that players should have to have the GBA controller just because different players can be at different screens at once. Because it should be able to fit every single... It should be able to fit 4 of these squares at once on the screen so that every player could see where they were going. Not that it's exactly common to have 4 different buildings or caves at once on the screen anyways. And even the arrows get blocked by these stupid shields. The arrows are supposed to be the major thing that breaks past these soldiers' defenses. But yeah, I love how the Hyrule Castle music starts playing the minute you walk into the castle. Like, it's so nostalgic. Like, this game is all about nostalgia for Link to the Past. And that's not a bad thing. In fact, I'd say it does it a lot better than A Link Between Worlds. And go figure, because this game was released closer to Link to the Past release date, so of course Nintendo would have a better idea of remembering what made Link to the Past good. Which includes stuff like being able to block projectiles with your shield just by facing them. I don't really like having to fight like these forced combat sections. I mean, it is cool that they have a combo counter thing that when you defeat an enemy, when you defeat a group of enemies without taking damage, the counter starts to show up, and it makes you feel good at the game, and it just keeps on rising, and the more it's risen, the more money you get. I don't know why you have to get money to upgrade the sword, especially since Force Gems are all over the place, so you'd think that the economy of Hyrule would have collapsed by now. Although granted, not everybody's an adventurer adventuring to defeat monsters and get bucket loads of cash that way, but still. But yeah, you're basically forced to collect 2,000 Force Gems in order to beat a level, as was mentioned in the game earlier, of course. So this means that if you get to the end of the level and you don't have at least 2,000 Force Gems, well, I think as long as you have the sword upgraded, it doesn't matter if you've lost money and have less than 2,000 Force Gems by the time you reach the end of the level. I'm pretty sure that the sword just doesn't downgrade and it keeps, because that would be kind of annoying otherwise. Like if you don't have at least 2,000 force gems, or at least the sword upgraded by the time you reach the end of the level, then attacking the barriers that tediously drag out beating the level will actually cause you to get electrocuted, and fortunately enough, it sends you back in time so that you can do the level again and have another opportunity to get enough money so that you can beat it, which is pretty kind of the game. I mean, I really don't see the point of forcing you to collect money to beat a level. I mean, the game throws money at you anyways, so it's not that hard to collect enough money. It's just, I guess, an extra level of challenge. I don't entirely see the point of this Zora Great Fairy side quest, but it is unique at least, and it leads to a pretty cool moment right here. I love how this game has like Wind Waker assets combined with A Link to the Past assets like the soldiers and the floor switches. Like, it's the perfect mix of my two favorite Zelda games growing up. Cause you have Link, which looks like Minish Cap Link, on a GameCube game at that. And Minish Cap Link looks like Wind Waker Link, and of course there's the Wind Waker Great Fairy. And you rescuing her is the in-game justification for why every Great Fairy Queen that you meet from now on, that looks like the Wind Waker one at that, is going to just automatically upgrade your items. I love that they bothered to provide an in-game justification for why they're helping you, instead of just helping you for no reason like in every other game. And it's nice that when you stand on those two floor switches, like, the effect keeps being the case after you walk away. Like, it's not like you're forced to press X to make the links just stay there and just walk all the way over to the other switches. Once you've separated yourself from the rest of the links by pressing X, you can press L to call the other links to you. And this is also the case in 2-player and 3-player mode, because if each of the 4 links isn't controlled by one person, then there's at least one kind of dummy link, basically. And the different players can steal that dummy link for themselves. But yeah, like, when you're separated, you can press L to call them all up, or you can press X again to switch to another link. And it's a nice touch that each link has a different voice, even if it's the same voice, but it's lowered and it's increased and lowered in pitch. Like, the one with the deepest voice is Purple Link, and the one with the highest voice is Red Link. Like, they didn't have to go through that trouble. And I like how it kind of plays a little melody as a result if you keep mashing the X button. This boss was way harder than I remembered it being. It's because of the stupid ricochet physics of the ball. Like, you constantly have to keep moving around so far left and right to attack it and reflect it back at him. More left and right than you'd think. And I hate that attack because you can't attack him at all during it, so it just feels like a waste of time. This is even worse in multiplayer because the ball changes color, and so it has to be a different player trying to attack it each time. It just feels like a mess. I mean, at least in single player, it keeps it more simple, and you can increase the range at which you can attack it by having the horizontal formation. But even then, it still feels like it goes too far to left or right and then you miss it. Like, this is a lot more tedious than I thought it would be. I remember this boss being fun. It's nice that they have Phantom Ganon and look like his Wind Waker design though. Although, having the Wind Waker designs doesn't really make much sense when you consider that this is supposed to be on the Twilight Princess timeline. And yet, it's borrowing assets from a game that it has nothing to do with. Of course, the bombs work exactly the same way that they do in all the other games. You place a bomb, you can pick it up and throw it. You can't put it down like in the 3D games. Nothing new to really talk about there. But yeah, something I forgot to talk about in the Cave of No Return is that there's actually a multiplayer difference for the level design. To make the bow and blue bracelet appear, as well as a money chest, you'll have to smash pots and step on 4 switches in a square simultaneously. See, I don't really see how that... Link has this funny pose. Pose for the camera, Link. I gotta roll when I just freed Crystal Maidens more often. But yeah, the multiplayer has different level design, and it's generally kind of pointless because it's a bit harder, or it's harder because of an oversight. And I don't see why it can't just be that way to begin with in single player, which everyone is going to be stuck playing anyways. So, what do the Crystal Maidens do when they're trapped in the crystals? Are they unconscious the whole time? I hope so, because that sounds like it'd be extremely boring. They don't have any TV in there, or a bathroom, or food, or water. I mean, I'm hoping that it works like it puts them in a stasis. So, it's not like they're gonna die of exposure if they are kept in crystals for too long. Or go insane from boredom from solitary confinement or whatever from being in there for such a long time. But yeah, like I think they're kept in the crystals so that the seal is broken. The seal that keeps Vati from escaping. But you broke the seal the minute you pulled out the Force Sword.